Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. Let's go. And the good news I want to share right away, there was the major exchange of the Ukrainian soldiers and the Russian soldiers. 150 Ukrainian soldiers came back from the Russian prison and they've stayed there, well, some of them stayed for more than 2 years. Just imagine being in those kind of the conditions, so now they're at home. Absolutely fantastic news. When I say those exchanges, guys, I believe that those are the best news, not just of the day, but probably for the last long time. And it is great that despite of what is happening, there are still exchanges between Ukraine and Russia. Happening kind of rarely, I would like to see those very often, but even what we have now is better than nothing. And I just hope that in the future there will be the exchange everyone for everyone. And guys, before we go to the major events, let's continue with the funny story in the Russian army. So let's watch this video. You saw donkeys, right? Guys, those are not the regular donkeys, those are the Russian army militarized donkeys. Russians are laughing in their own social media about this stuff. Literally, Russian army started to receive donkeys for the supplies. Not to eat those donkeys obviously, but I guess some of the Russians may try to do it. Those Russian military donkeys, according to the Russian command, supposed to improve the situation with the Russian army logistics. And guys, it's not a joke, it is happening really in the Russian army. The Russians themselves are laughing of their own army in the comments. News from the 21st century. One of our units has received a high-tech transport. It was supplied officially through the Russian Defense Ministry line. It was sent for the important tasks for the Russian army supplies. Now try that, Elon Musk, and you're telling me that the Syrian experience is useless. And it's not like 1-2 donkeys there. No, there are lots of the donkeys sent to the Russian army. And some of the Russian soldiers exclaimed that it could be a good tool for their army supplies. Some people are just laughing when they see donkey in our garage. But even before joining the Russian military communication service, I was seriously looking for this possible variant of the transportation using donkey. Because if I go to restore, for example, cable cat, I carry not just weaponry and armor, but also the rest of the equipment which is used to fix the issue. It is very heavy, especially then you have to move fast. And then we go to change our guys, we take also extra provision. And here he tells about the pluses of the donkey. They are silent and they don't need any sort of the fuel. Guys, Russian army is not the second army in the world, it's the first one for using the donkeys. Here's one more photo of the poor animals. Here you can see 3 of the donkeys. And definitely some people in camouflage. I just hope that Russians will not attack on those donkeys and will use them just for the supplies, because after all our soldiers will have to cut the Russian supplies, probably hitting donkeys. It's terrible.
Но факт в том, что нам выдали ослика. Он во взводе обеспечения припаркованный. Говорят, вот ослик. У вас же хуёво с транспортом? Хуёво. Уралы горят? Горят. Вот, ослик. Возите на нем быка напередок. Ослик, блядь, ослик. Настоящий, ебучий, живой, блядь, ослик. Выдали, блядь. Это не гумка привезла, это не еще что-то. Это, блядь, обозная машина Урал. Поехал на получение там имущества, блядь, ему выдали, блядь, там осла.
It was the audio message of one of the Russian soldiers towards his friend. One more video from Russian official military blogger channel, 2 Mayors it's called, and yes, it shared truthful information about donkeys. One more video from the same channel, it is the Russian military donkey again. And one more filmed somewhere on the front lines. Well, actually, I saw this video roughly 1 week ago. I thought that okay, some of the volunteers just supplied donkey for whatever reason, but it is the official military support of the Russian army. Official, through the Ministry of Defense. Here you see the hand of the Russian soldier, the sleeve from the Russian military jacket. What joke should I put here? I don't know, they're kind of flat. But Republicans again may accuse Democrats for this. Yeah, the situation in the Russian army is just absolutely crazy. Like, there's so much corruption there. Generals feel absolutely great. They put millions in their pockets, but Russian army now receives donkeys to fight. Well, actually the situation is great for Ukraine, so Putin tried to minimize corruption in the Russian army, but it seems like if they now use donkeys, I don't know, the Russian army is for sure not winning this war. Yeah, still there are no hundreds and thousands of those donkeys on the front lines replacing the Russian army vehicles. The Russian army is still strong, but it goes down really fast. They have huge crisis with supplies, with battle army vehicles, with everything, including military men. So yeah, the donkey thing shows a real picture. Do you really think that Russia now has the capabilities to attack NATO countries? I don't think so. But if they have the break for a few years, maybe they'll try. And definitely Russia has huge logistics problems for their army. Ukrainian drones work well, hitting the Russian army vehicles behind the front lines, but Russians just cannot compensate their trucks with donkeys. No, it's not possible. By the way, you may say it's the Ukrainian triangle, but no, it's the Russian army vehicle. The Ukrainian triangle is hollow inside. Why do Russians use the similar kind of symbol? Out of clue. Well, probably the most of the losses Russia has among Bukhanka vans. There are many of them filmed, totally annihilated, destroyed. But the bigger vehicles like Kamaz, Ural are also being hit widely, and Russia uses them as Ukraine uses, for example, well, not the Bradley, but some of the other BTRs, operating those vehicles not just for the supplies, but also as in a way attack vehicles, delivering the infantry to the zero line positions. My friends, if you want to support the job that I do here on YouTube, you are welcome to my Patreon. I'll put the link for my Patreon page right in the video description below. Thank you so much for supporting my motivation. If we speak about the front lines, Ukraine still uses massively HIMARS rocket artillery system. This time the Russian positions were hit somewhere in Donetsk region. I cannot specify the exact position, but Ukraine this time used HIMARS with a cluster shell. As it is reported, it was the Russian training ground. Guys, I'm already tired to speak about the Russian oil storages and the refineries which Ukraine hits every night, almost every night. So the last night there was the kaboom and fire in the Krasnodar region of the Russian Federation, where Russia lost this oil storage. As it is reported, at least 3 of the oil tanks caught fire, and the fire continued to spread in the facility. And on CCTV camera we see that something was flying really fast there. A distance from Ukrainian controlled territory to that facility is roughly 236 kilometers. Alright, to the other news, Russia and Belarus signed a special nuclear weapon protocol that in case of the aggression against Belarus or Russia, the allied country may use its nukes, and Belarus already has nukes, given to them by the Russian Federation. But you know guys, this agreement is not just about nuclear weaponry, it's about the general protection of both of the countries and determination to use the military force if needed. And it gives me a clue that probably Russia is going to use Belarus army in the war against Ukraine. So Russia wants to escalate. They already used North Koreans, it didn't work well, but for Belarus actually it might work. Like for example, Russia may say that okay, the Kursk region is under attack by Ukrainian army, so Belarus might be called by Russia to join the war on their side. Well, officially from the legislation perspective, Belarus is in the war already, because they gave their territory and the airspace for the Russian army. And according to definition, it's the co-aggression against some of the state, in this case against Ukraine. Even though Belarus says no, but in fact it is like that. As you probably know, 1 week ago there were elections in Belarus, and Russia, probably together with Lukashenko, they saw that there is no resistance from the Belarus people as it was before. Many of the Belarusians were jailed, some were forced to leave the country. I personally have a Belarus mate who was forced to go to Poland because he supported the coup against Lukashenko. But now people's will is just broken for resistance. They understand that if they resist, they will be again jailed or harmed or even unalived. So I would call Lukashenko the same bloody dictator as Putin. He just has less tools in his pocket. And obviously less capable army, but Putin might use Lukashenko for Putin's personal needs. You see, Russians have the problem with their mobilization. If Putin restarts it once again, potentially there could be some of the resistance from the Russian people, and Putin doesn't want to risk his own power. That's why actually he pays millions of rubles for volunteers to go, but volunteers are not forever, and if Putin restarts mobilization, many more Russian men will leave the country, finishing off the Russian economy. So Belarus actually could be a good variant for Putin. They may start some of the provocation against Belarus, saying that it was a Ukrainian side that launched, for example, missile to hit the capital city of Minsk, some of the school or theater with many of the casualties. So Lukashenko will accuse Ukraine, and that is how Belarus will be involved in the war. By the way, the similar stuff happened in the occupied region of Donbass, so-called DPR, where Russia launched some of the missiles against their own military facility and then accused the Ukraine for escalating. And later on there was some sort of the school hit. Luckily by the time there was no one inside, but still it was enough for Russia to start a full-scale war, to exit the Minsk agreements and basically start their massive aggression against Ukraine. So exactly the same stuff might happen in Belarus, because Putin wants Belarus to also join him in this madness of war. Putin doesn't want to stop. He's searching for more and more resources. All of those talks that the end of the war is soon, that Trump is going to handle it, they're just, as for me, useless. Only one man can stop it, and it is Russian dictator. Has the Donald Trump some influence on the Russian dictator? Probably yes, but it's not enough. And Zelensky today said that definitely Belarus will be involved in the war against Ukraine. It might happen this spring, summer, or autumn, but participation of Belarus is almost imminent. Well, I would give it also a high chance. So Zelensky again asked our allies to provide more of the military support for Ukraine. So what might save Belarus from the active entrance with their forces to Ukraine? Well, actually it's China. China invested huge funds into Belarus, and Lukashenko has some separate relations with China, separate from Russia, I would say, because Russia wants to annex Belarus fully, like they want to annex Ukraine. But for China, it's important that Belarus would stay as a separate state, but in the orbit of the social interests of China plus Russia. The same for Ukraine. China doesn't want Putin to occupy Ukraine fully. And in their rhetorics, China says that Ukraine should stay sovereign country, and they do not recognize the territories which were occupied by Russia as the Russian territories. Only North Korea does it. But North Korea has nothing to lose. Even Belarus, by the way, didn't recognize the occupation of Crimea and Donbass. Well, Russia is very dependent on China. So if Xi says that Belarus shouldn't enter the war with its forces, I guess that it would be very hard for Putin to refuse. But again, it's hard to tell 100% because Russia may start their own provocations, and they also have huge influence on Belarus. About Lukashenko himself, I don't think that he's willing actually to send his army to die in Ukraine. It is a very unpopular step, as we see in Russia. Well, we'll see how it goes, but Ukrainian officials are very concerned. About the nuclear weaponry, I don't think that it will be used. Well, at least at this stage. Some of the news this night from Volgograd or Stalingrad. I think it was Panzer 1S air defense of the Russian army. Probably it hit the drone or maybe some of the building as usual. And we have some new photo of the new Ukrainian drones. All of the information, visual, videos and text I got from the open sources. Here on the top you can see Ukrainian Luty drone relative to the size of the average man. We see that the drone is not that small. And here are two more black drones. This one is Beaver, but this one is obviously equipped with a jet engine, so it has the lower range, but it is much faster. And some of the other drone, I don't know its name, on the back, looks like the small airplane. Ukraine is able to produce lots of the drones. The top drone for production is now Luty drone, if we speak about the long-range drones. But Beaver is also produced massively. This jet drone probably I haven't saw it in action. And now Ukraine strikes Russia with those drones even harder than Russia strikes Ukraine with their Shahid drones.
Вот, ребят, это работает экскаватор. Это братская могила, бля. Вот, бля, фура стоит, на ней привезли, бля. И вон сейчас там дальше увидите. Вот. Там вот Вон, видите, фуры стоят. Вот это все, короче, привезли, бля, трупы, бля. Братские могилы, короче, хоронят здесь пацанов и потом говорят, что пропали без вести.
This is Donetsk. A guy who is filming this video is saying that by those big trucks, Russia delivers dead bodies and they bury them in the local fields. Well, guys, honestly, it's hard to confirm it here, but it looks like it. Why would trucks be here? So many excavators. I wouldn't say 100% that the guy who's filming is right, but maybe he is right. It's the high probability. I wish we'd see at least some of the boxes, but the job here is really strange with those trucks. Russia might create those big unregistered cemeteries for their own soldiers, just to announce that they are lost somewhere on the front lines, that they have no confirmation that they were zeroed, so the compensations for the Russian families in this case is absent. Right, guys, to the other news, Mr. Keith Kellogg will attend Munich Security Conference. It will happen in around 1 week, and there Mr. Kellogg will tell his plan, or probably Trump's plan, about the war in Ukraine and how to finish it. The goal is to end bloody and costly war in Ukraine. It's a good goal. I'll meet with American allies who are ready to work with us. While we already have some of the extra information from Bloomberg, I shared the story on my Telegram channel. Probably Bloomberg already knows something and they uncovered the plan. So first step is to freeze the war in Ukraine, leaving the Russian troops on the occupied territories. Obviously, no one, including Ukraine, would not recognize the territories which were occupied as the Russian ones. Putin knows that, so it is logical, but in a way, how can you stop this war if Russia is attacking? They're taking the ground, assaulting with their forces. It was impossible to achieve a ceasefire in Ukraine for long 8 years. There was, you may call it, a pause since 2015 till 2022 in Ukraine, but still, there was the shooting, there were casualties. The front lines were not calm even back then, but now it's the full-scale war and Russia is determined to occupy lots of the Ukrainian territories, and I think all of the Ukraine. So Mr. Kellogg says freezing a war, but how to achieve it, no one knows. I'm sure that Kellogg doesn't know himself. There should be some of the lever to act on Putin, but Putin, I think, doesn't care. And the next point here is simultaneously with the freezing of the war, provide Ukraine with security guarantees so that Moscow cannot attack again. Guys, the only security guarantee for Ukraine is the NATO membership. Any kind of the other guarantee is useless. Even if Europe or United States of America deploy their forces in Ukraine, it is not a robust guarantee, no. The Ukrainian military officials already calculated that to protect the entire territory of Ukraine, like the border between the occupied territories and the Ukrainian-controlled territories, also the border with Belarus and Russia here, you need at least 200,000 of the troops deployed. And it would be barely enough. Some of the legacy media say that France, together with the UK, are capable to deploy roughly 50,000 troops, but I don't believe in that too. It's too much, and you should keep those forces active all the time. Just imagine the cost of this protection. And without the United States, I don't think that it will work. Well, I said before, and you may say that if Putin attacks NATO soldiers here in Ukraine, it would be the same as the attack on the NATO itself. But honestly, guys, do you really believe that NATO would nuke Russia for that? I don't think so. So the NATO membership for Ukraine is the only way out. Well, maybe acquiring a nuclear weaponry for Ukraine is the other solution. But Western countries would never agree on that. They would allow Ukraine to be occupied, but without nukes. So it's the critical line for United States and for the Western world as well. They don't need Ukraine to be a nuclear country. So if someone tells you, give up your weapons, never do it. Even if they tell you that they will protect you, no. Example is here, Ukraine. So as for me, guys, I don't see any sort of the peace solution in the coming years, actually. As far as the Russian regime is alive, they'll try to occupy Ukraine. You may call it as an existential thought of Vladimir Putin and his circle. Well, actually not just Ukraine, but they want to occupy all of the ex-Soviet countries to restore their empire. By the way, about the ex-Soviet countries, let's speak about Azerbaijani Airlines Embraer 190, which was shut down by the Russian Panzer I-S missile. Why am I so sure about it? Well, I've told in my kind of the big video on my pilot blog channel discussing this particular case, and I did the review as an airline pilot on this preliminary report. They have all of the flight data recorded, they have communication between the crew and the ATC. It's in Russian, but I translated everything, I explained everything because I know this language, it's my mother language. But the fact that the airplane was hit by the Russian air defense missile, it's already a known fact. However, they do not specify that it was the Russian air defense in this report. There will be other people who will tell it. But Azerbaijan officials already stated that it was the Russian missile. As you can see, hydraulic lines were just cut by debris, not just from the one system, but all of the hydraulic systems lost the pressure and the fluid. Also, the hydraulic reservoir was hit and there was the leak, plus the wiring for the stabilizer trim was also cut, so the crew lost the control. The only remaining option for them to control the airplane was to use the thrust of the engines. It's crazy, and we are not trained to deal with those kind of the failures, so it's actually a miracle that at least someone survived this crash. Also, analyzing this report, I may state that navigation systems of the airplane were not working because Russia jammed those. There was no update from GPS, there was no update from the DME system as well, so the airplane navigation was basically lost. Also, there were some of the issues with the tower control, and basically the air traffic controller in Grozny was really incompetent. However, still, I don't think that Russians shut down the airplane for purpose. I think it was done by mistake, but it's the usual stuff in the Russian army. They don't care, they don't have logic, they don't have discipline. That's why Russians shut down commercial airplanes. From the Azerbaijani side, I think it's important to push Russia more, to demand from the Russian political management the recognition of their responsibility for this act of the war crime. So people who bear responsibility for this act should be obviously jailed, prosecuted and jailed. Compensation should be paid for relatives and the airline. Obviously, you cannot return those who are perished, but at least those steps should be done. But Russia fails to recognize their responsibility. Yes, for me it's a very sensitive case because I'm myself in aviation, and in my particular airline there was similar tragic case. Then Iran shut down our Boeing 737 near Tehran, where all of the passengers and all of the crew were perished. But at least on the third day, Iran recognized that it was their air defense. Here Russia is simply silent. They don't care. It's the total disrespect to Azerbaijani side. So even then you have a direct evidence and put Putin's nose into his own shit, they still fail to say that it's their shit, that it was their mistake to shut down this airplane. No, they're too proud to say that they're guilty. For my Azerbaijani followers, guys, stay strong, you are on the right side, and obviously the truth will be revealed. And just after preliminary report of the crash was released, Azerbaijani side decided to allocate $1 million for humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Well, 1 million, you may say it's not a lot, but Azerbaijan shows its solidarity with Ukraine. So if the Russian regime continue to stay silent about the air crash, I guess Azerbaijan will support Ukraine even more. Well, maybe not the Ukrainian military against humanitarian projects, but still Azerbaijan shows that it supports Ukraine by the time that Ukraine is in war with Russia, and it was the proper step to do from Azerbaijan. And here is the official website of Ilham Aliyev, President of Republic of Azerbaijan, where he stated that definitely there was the allocation of the support for Ukraine. As I understood, mostly generators. By the way, it's not the first time that Azerbaijan supports humanitarian programs of Ukraine. Finally, huge positive news for Ukrainian army. Probably I should have said about it before, but Zelensky and Ukrainian military command have started a massive army reform to transfer it for the core system. Well, now still there are just battalions and regiments in Ukrainian army. They deployed elsewhere alongside the front lines. But the core system accommodates many of the brigades and regiments, creating the zones of responsibility for particular commander of the corps. So you have a corps and there are many of the brigades which keep their positions. They're not dispersed alongside the front lines as it was or as it is now. So the commander of the corps knows exactly what is happening in his area of responsibility. And it also improves logistics and the most important, communication between the brigades. Because now brigades are just separated. They don't have anything in common, let's say. Well, maybe just the commander of this entire area and the general commander who live their own lives and they're moving brigades from one side to another. So every brigade in Ukraine is like a separate small army, and depends on the brigade they also may receive more supplies, less supplies, different supplies. It creates disorganization of the army in general, and again there is the problem with communication between those brigades. They don't have the common warfield command center, a commander who is responsible for the particular area, let's say. But with a core system then you have many of the brigades united in the same corps, in the same group. You may operate very efficiently, especially if you stay at the same place. You know, territory, terrain, enemy, all of the defense lines are known as well. So it is actually a huge step of the Ukrainian army development, which has been supported by lots of the volunteers, like all of the volunteers of the Ukrainian army, and obviously most of the soldiers also like this idea. Alright, this is the Ukrainian probably MiG-29 fighter jet. It carries a JDAM bomb, but it is bigger than usual. It is now 1,000-pound bomb, which was spotted in Ukraine for the first time. The gliding aviation bombs show that they're very effective, especially Russia uses those a lot. Basically, they've took the idea from the American-made JDAM module. Well, this bomb may glide up to 70 kilometers, which is good. It provides more safety for our pilots who might drop those bombs and turn around 70 kilometers away from the target. Well, I would say that still for now JDAMs are more precise, but at the same time Russia tries to modernize their gliding bombs, reaching the same or even better precision. Oh boy, do I have to speak about Donald Trump again? In almost every of my videos I speak about him. I don't like to do it because every time I speak about Donald you unsubscribe somehow. It's not a joke, it's the real statistics for this channel. So if you like me, subscribe. To go to the moon, we need it. But I'll continue to tell about American politics because it influences this time not just Ukraine but probably every one of us. So yeah, there was the meeting between Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, the first official meeting of the new American president and a foreign leader. I'm just joking here, just look at the color of the fist and the color of the face. Can I joke about Donald? Well, I guess yes. And it looks like that in addition to Greenland, Canada and Panama, Donald now wants to take over Gaza. Well, now the White House officials say that Donald Trump didn't meant that, but he said what he said on this meeting, and let's watch it.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out.
Look at the face of Netanyahu. He knows English and he doesn't understand what is happening.
Create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area.
What authority would allow you to do that? Are you talking about a permanent occupation there?
I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. And everybody I've spoken to, this was not a decision made lightly. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs with something that will be magnificent.
Netanyahu, what is happening?
Magnificent in a really magnificent area that nobody would know. Nobody can look because all they see is death and destruction.
I mentioned again tonight our 3 goals. And the third goal is to make sure that Gaza never poses a threat to Israel again. President Trump is taking it to a much higher level.
Guys, you heard it yourself from Donald Trump. You understand that the Middle East topic is very difficult, it is complicated, but here all of the borders are crossed. Donald Trump literally said that they want to take over Gaza to provide long-term ownership. Moreover, Donald Trump called for Palestinians to leave their Gaza Strip and to be displaced voluntarily. But actually, guys, I do not believe that it will be done voluntarily, so they will be forcibly taken from their own land, I guess. If you want to somehow to take over some of their territory, and if locals are against it, they will be displaced. I guess it's the usual practice in this case. So here we have the definition of the genocide. Article 2 of the convention that was taken in 1948. Let me zoom in it for you. So forcibly transferring children of their group to another group. That, by the way, Putin is wanted by the International Criminal Court. Well, I guess everything of that as the definition of genocide applies to Russia too, but if you forcibly transfer children of Gaza Strip to another country, it is also considered a genocide. Guys, Middle East is a very complicated place, so it's really hard to find out some of the single solution there. But what I know that taking territory and dislocating people is a very bad thing. Like Hamas is the problem there, but Palestinians, I don't think so. Hamas is also a threat for Palestinians. I cannot show you it here, but there were many of the terrible videos shared on internet of how Hamas done very terrible things to their own citizens. And yes, I understand that Palestinians also grown under the brainwashed ideology of fanatics of Hamas, but it doesn't give the right for anyone to vanish them just like that. No, the other solution here is possible against Hamas, not against Palestinians. But the Trump's proposal is just crazy. What he said on a conference shows his incompetence. And later on, Donald probably realized of what he said there, and now Trump's team tried to walk back Gaza takeover plan. But I guess it's too late. How we say, слово не воробей, вылетит не поймаешь, which means that your word is not a bird. If it flies away, you cannot catch it. And Trump's words here just couldn't be misunderstood. And the attempts of the Trump's team to play everything back and show in a different light, well, they're just pathetic. So yeah, guys, those will be not boring for years. Why am I even saying about this case? Because, you know, Ukraine is also partially destroyed by Russia. So some powerful state may just say, okay, your country is destroyed, we'll take over your country, we're gonna demand it, we're gonna build some of the new houses, and you, well, just go to the neighboring countries elsewhere. We don't care if it's your land or not, just go, leave. It is a very terrible thing. So you may like people in Palestine, you may not like them, but what Trump says here is just crazy. Now guys, let's go to the frontlines update. One is kind of positive for Ukraine. It happened the day before yesterday, where Ukraine advanced in the Pokros direction. One of the streets and one of the field was liberated. It means that not just the Russian army is going forward, but Russia moved ahead in Kupiansk direction. Yeah, this is Kupiansk, a city in the Kharkiv region, and here it was the Russian army advancement. They want to go to Kupiansk from this northern side before they try to go it using this rail. There is the railway actually, but if they want to go here, it will be very difficult because there is difficult terrain. But the good thing that for the last 24 hours there was just a minor advancement of the Russian army. Firstly, they went to Andriivka, so yesterday and today it's not good. If they occupy Andriivka, they may try to go to Constantinople really fast if this bridge is there. But if it's not, it will be more difficult for Russia, obviously. Plus, Russia moved in Dachna just a little, so yesterday and today. Small advancement. I would say that so far Ukrainian group in Ulakli and Dachna, well, it's more or less safe to leave this area using this main road. So this pocket for now is safe without the threat of being encircled. And I'm sure that the competent general is responsible for it. If we check out the military maps from the Mykos 73, Ukraine is really fighting hard in this pocket, even performing the limited counterattacks. In Pokrov's direction, Ukraine strikes as well, trying to stop the Russian army. My friends, again, keep you updated on situation in Ukraine and not only. For now, please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. And as usual, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time.